Hey everybody, welcome to another video review. Apologize in advance for how I sound. I'm still kind of getting over, a little bit of a upper respiratory infection. It's been going on for about a week. Feeling a bit better, but still got that little nagging cough. So apologize in advance for the frog in my throat, the frequent, even more than usual frequent clearing of the throats, and an occasional cough. You might hear me stop and take a little sip of tea to clear my throat. But I didn't want to wait to do this review. This thing came in a couple of days ago, and I've waited long enough. Now this, took a bit of time because I, went to Disneyland with my daughter for a day. So, it came in actually the day I was scheduled to leave, and I just had enough time to kind of open it up, make sure everything was okay. And then when I got back, I had to do a little bit of research. I'm kind of doing this review backwards in a sense. So I'm talking as usual. I'm going to start, moving the lightsaber around. Oh, of course, with all the rambling, I neglected to introduce this properly, but of course, this is the Master Replicas Star Wars Empire Strikes Back Luke Skywalker Signature Edition. So from Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, Luke's lightsaber, signed by Mark Hamill. This is one of 1,500 in existence. So again, I'm doing this a little bit backwards because I'm probably supposed to do the Luke Skywalker Signature Edition from A New Hope, because that's kind of like, chronologically, that's the first lightsaber that we see. And then they made Empire Strikes Back, of course, afterward, and it's kind of cool to look at some of the changes and the story that's behind the changes. So here, of course, I'm kind of spoiling it almost because it's a little bit trickier to review and talk about the features of the Empire Strikes Back lightsaber hilt when you haven't done the review of the original New Hope. And I was flirting, in a sense, with the idea of just waiting until I get the New Hope Signature Edition before doing the review. But I decided, no, that's not the way it works. It's not like you can pick these up at Target or something like that. They're very, very difficult and expensive to procure. And I decided rather than wait until I get the New Hope one, which is basically twice as rare, at an edition size of only $750 for the signature version, I was just going to go ahead and do the review and go backwards. And in a sense, that is fitting because this product was released in 2003, circa about. You can tell due to a multitude of reasons. The first is the fact that the signature plaque is again on a silver plaque, which is all of the very first Master Replicas Signature Edition pieces were all silver plaques. And then you can tell by the display case where the acrylic is actually placed inside the lip. Later Master Replicas display cases were placed over the base, so there was a small little indented lip, and then the acrylic case will go over that. So and in addition to that, the acrylic case is quite a bit shorter. The newer ones have at least an inch more height. So all of these things clearly point to this being an older release. And those of you who may know this, I don't know how many of you have the knowledge, because it is a 20-year-old company and over 20-year-old collectible. But for those of you out there who do have that knowledge, feel free to correct me. I'm thinking that this has got to be it might be like the first, it might be the first Master Replicas lightsaber ever released. I'm not sure. It's definitely really, really old. It's up there with the Count Dooku, and it's up there with the, like for instance, the Darth Vader dual signature New Hope, version. And I say that because obviously 2003, this is one of the first years that Master Replicas, kind of started doing their business, started releasing replicas. And the edition size reflects that. I think that this hilt holds the distinction of having the highest edition size of any of the signature editions. 1,500 is a lot. Count Dooku had 1,000, as did the New Hope Vader dual sig. And then afterwards, it rapidly decreased to 750. And then near the end of the line, it got down to even 500. So 1,500, this is definitely, just by numbers alone, you can't really consider this super rare. I mean, the Obi-Wan Elite Edition from Phantom Menace was 1,250. So, the limitation was 250 less than this signature version. And so in terms of, again, the limitation, I find it to be a little bit high, in my opinion. But the crazy thing is that even with so many of these out there, they're not actually that easy to find in the wild in a condition where it has everything. So, trying to get one of these guys with the plaque, with the paperwork, in the original brown shipper with the original packaging, that's not easy. They're usually missing things that they're usually not in the original shippers. I know there's one that's kind of out there. They're trying to sell for literally they're just trying to sell the hilt, just the lightsaber. There's no case, nothing else. And so I think that there was a lot of attrition among those 1,500 Mark Hamill signed Empire Strikes Back Luke sabers here. Another thing is that, at least for Luke Skywalker, for many of us in the generation in our 40s, I'm 40, I'm going to be 48 this year. So for a lot of us in that age range, The Empire Strikes Back still stands as one of the best movies ever made, and definitely in my opinion the best Star Wars movie ever made. I recently saw it again with my 8-year-old daughter. She's sort of been getting into Star Wars, and so she's been watching the movies, and I watched that one with her, and kind of watching her reaction as an 8-year-old, and watching with her as a 48-year-old. That movie still stands up. That movie is still, in my opinion, a work of genius. It has so many great and amazing and iconic lines and scenes and emotions. And so because of that, I think that hilts from Empire Strikes Back to a lot of us, in our age group, those lightsabers are kind of the most desirable. And so even though they, even though they made, the most, even though they made 1,500 Luke, Skywalker signature edition versions, even though they made 1,500 of them, I think that they're still holding value, not only because so many of them got broken up or damaged or just kind of dispersed, but also because Empire Strikes Back holds such a special place in so many people's hearts and minds in that sense. And so despite all of that, if you are able to get one of these guys complete in box, in good to excellent condition, if you can get it for less than $3,000 in today's marketplace, I think that that's a very, very solid deal, very, very fair deal. You can get them for better deals if you're lucky, but it does require quite a bit of luck. I think one sold on eBay for only $1,500 earlier this year, but the problem is that the rubber grips were pretty badly damaged and essentially would have demanded stripping with alcohol. And it's up to you whether this is the sort of thing that you feel comfortable with or that you want. It's sort of a little bit of a controversial topic there. And I'll give you my thoughts when I actually take the lightsaber, take the hilt out of the case to show to you in real time. So that's sort of my my preamble to this particular signature edition. So now let's like kind of get into, I guess the review will peel it down little by little. You can see that the acrylic case has a little bit of yellowing, which, it's over 20 years old. That's kind of unavoidable. You've seen that before in some of my other video reviews. So there's a little bit of yellowing, but the case itself came in really good condition. There will always be little tiny micro scratches, which you can't even see even on high def, video like I have here. But I would have to say that this is the first case where I couldn't even find a small scratch. It just came essentially, in my view, like pristine. Like, not perfect, but like I would say 98, 99% pristine. Didn't see any network of cracks or issues. For instance, the Luke version 2 Return of the Jedi signature edition came with a lot of these little tiny scratches. There's one little part that was little tiny like circle scratches, very fine, and luckily that polished right out, and it was basically gone, invisible. So I was able to polish all those things out. But this one did not require really any polish. I just basically cleaned it with the Brillianize, and the Brillianize doesn't really polish; it just cleans. And I didn't need to again polish any scratches. So I'm pretty happy with the display case. The mirror, of course, is a different story. I've never ever seen a perfect mirror, like ever. Now, granted, I've never bought one of these brand new in box. The upcharge for a brand new unopened one of these hilts is still kind of beyond what I'm willing to pay. I don't think in my mind that that's, I guess important enough, to me at least, because obviously I'm going to open them, I'm going to display them. And so to have a sealed in box, the premium to me personally has just not been worth it. I've been unwilling to pay the premium to have one of those. So maybe obviously one of those, the mirror base will be pristine, but I haven't found one yet. It's kind of unfortunate. That Master Replicas decided to create an acrylic like base with a mirror. I don't know exactly the layers that they did it, but it's just incredibly prone to little micro scratches. Any dust on it will just scratch. And I do polish with a Brillianize. You don't want to polish with anything more than that, mainly because it just scratches. It's kind of like almost like surgery where you're trying to get rid of scar tissue by cutting away more scar. Like, I'm going to show you my scar on my wrist here from my wrist surgery. And so this is like a keloid hypertrophic scar. And it's almost like, you want to get rid of this. You can't just cut this thing out. If you cut this thing out, you'll just make another scar. And it's the same thing with the scratches on this mirror base. You can't get rid of the micro scratches by trying to polish aggressively, because you're just going to create more scratches with the dust. And so Brillianize is basically the only thing I use to just kind of gently wipe it. And again, you just move it back about 12 inches, and it's a mirror. I see my face, it looks great. If you go really, really close, 3 to 4 inches, you can see some of the little fine little scratches. But that's something that you just have to live with all of these Master Replicas, mirror bases essentially. But overall, I am quite pleased, with the condition of the acrylic case and the mirror base. The thing why I have it here that I think is really annoying though, is that because this was one of the first waves released, and in my mind, it might be the very first one they made, I really dislike the fact that this is so cramped. It's built so low. If you look at it, my phone recording this, I put it extra low, and it's still, kind of looking down on this acrylic case. And so there's just not a lot of room. Later Master Replicas display cases just had more room, that they put the case, instead of creating an indentation, they made the case larger to go over the base. So there was a thin lip, and they made the height way higher. especially for Empire Strikes Back, for instance. And I think they made a little bit of a change there. But this is still the first generation. You see it with the New Hope, where the plaque is so tall and the leg for the lightsaber is so low that the plaque is kind of obscuring the lightsaber, okay? And not only that, they made the legs here so narrow that you couldn't put the plaque underneath it. Now, you couldn't do it anyways, right? Because this lightsaber is built so low to the base. You can see that it would be impossible to put this plaque underneath the lightsaber. It just wasn't tall enough. But even so, the legs are so narrow that it was hitting the plaque. So you're forced to essentially put the signature plaque off to one side, especially, there's no choice. You have to put it in this corner. And I think that's kind of what the Master Replicas engineers who designed this wanted you to do, because there is a small asymmetry, if you were to look at it, where there's just a bit more space on the right than the left. And so it's obviously meant for you to put the plaque on the right corner. But again, just because of the way this was done, it was done so tightly that if you look at it from this angle, you'll see that the plaque is actually touching the lightsaber. It's like sub-millimeter space. And when this acrylic case goes in place, there's no room. It literally just pushes the silver against the metal of the lightsaber, which, in my opinion, is kind of annoying. Number one, you're not able to see a good portion of the emitter area. And then, of course, because it's so tight, it's really touching it, which is really not what you would want. But, there you go. So a lot of people actually took it upon themselves to get rid of this case. And they would either have a custom acrylic display case made, or they would take an acrylic case from another lightsaber and use that instead to display their Empire Strikes Back Luke signature. And this also happened. Excuse me, taking a little sip. This also happened for instance, with some of the Obi-Wan Kenobi weathered lightsabers from New Hope, where again, it was released in this type of case, low, flat, tight, and it just kind of doesn't look right next to the rest of the line, where they transitioned pretty quickly within a few years, actually, to the larger, more roomier cases. So this is an interesting aside, because when you're looking at eBay auctions and you are looking at, for instance, a couple of video reviews, you'll notice that the cases are not standard. So on eBay, there are two Empire Strikes Back Luke signature editions. One of them unopened, so it's not even been displayed. It's literally like it's not sealed, because they did open the box to check, to make sure everything was there, but it's all like original wrapping, original box, the whole 9 yards. And that one, I can't really tell. But there was another auction, only two of them. The other one showed the hilt in the case, and I could immediately tell that case was not an original, Empire Strikes Back Luke Signature Edition case. It was the newer version, because you could see him definitely put the plaque in between the legs, and the saber was well above, and so that immediately told me that was not an original case. Which, in my opinion, does hurt the value a little bit, because the whole idea of buying a complete box is that you want everything as it was created and shipped for Master Replicas. And even though the newer case is the superior case, and even though the custom case may be better, technically speaking, it's just not, it's no longer complete in box, you know what I'm saying? Because again, of this minor fact, and it does kind of affect the description. So I don't think that the seller honestly even understood that or even knew that. He probably thinks that it's original, and why would he? Nobody thinks about the case. But of course, as someone who owns the original version, I can tell you that listing, is missing the original case. And so technically it's not a complete in-box work. Whether you care about that, of course, is up to you, but that's kind of the way it is. There are only 2 other YouTube videos about or showing the Empire Strikes Back Luke. One of them, of course, is by Alex L., who owns all of the Luke Skywalker signature editions. He's basically the only one on YouTube who has all 3. I'm hoping to join him eventually, but for now, he is the only one. And when you see him review his Empire Strikes Back Luke signature edition, you can clearly see that he basically has the same situation as me. He has the same display case. That means you know it's an original, and he was forced to put his plaque in the same corner. And I think he mentioned that he was going to just change it to a better case. And I probably am going to do the same. I may have to have mine custom fabricated because, in the good old days, when these things were costing literally $300-400, some people would just buy a hilt for $300 for the case, and then they would sell off the hilt or do something crazy just to get the case. And when it's only a few $100s, you could do that. And by the way, that also explains how come there's so many broken sets out there, how many floating around, whether I only have the lightsaber, I don't have the certificate of authenticity or the packaging. How did that happen? Well, it happens when you make, as in just off the top of my head, you make 4,000 Revenge of the Sith Obi-Wans, and they're devalued to the point where they were going, 17, 18 years ago, they were going for $350 a pop. And so, it was no big deal. Now those things are going for $1,200. But, that's life, right? That's collecting. But that explains why sets were being broken apart and how people were getting these cases was because back then, maybe there wasn't as many options for custom fabricating display cases. So they were forced to essentially use Masters Replicas cases. And how did you get the case? You buy the saber for a few $100, and then you basically get rid of the saber. You saw off the saber to get those display cases. So there you have it. The other Empire Strikes Back Luke signature edition is by a YouTuber named Boba Fett. And he's the only other guy. And when you look at his review, you can immediately tell that his was not original because the person he bought it from did not have the original packaging. So he had to wrap up the case and the base and all that stuff separately in a big box with a lot of bubble wrap. And then when he put his together, again, you can tell that the case was not the original. It was a larger case, newer master replicas. Again, the plaque was being able to be, displayed in the center, much higher. Again, in my opinion, a better case. But for collecting purposes, that particular version is going to have a little bit less value because it did not come complete in box with the original packaging and with the original case. So again, that's just kind of my feeling on that, my thoughts on that. I want to upgrade this, but I'm still going to, of course, keep the original display case, the acrylic and the base, because again, from a point of view of collectability and from history, that's what it came with, right? You can't really change that. All right, so that's 20 minutes of just a lot of rambling and talking about detail, but hopefully, again, there's so few reviews of these out there on YouTube, maybe 5, 7, 10, 15 years down the road. I don't know how many more YouTube reviews will be made, how many people will collect them, and then after collecting them, like me, want to actually talk about them on YouTube. So I want to give as much information as I personally found out and researched, so that it's going to be out there. Okay, so what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take the acrylic case off. I'm going to move that aside. And then I'm going to put the black background right up against that. So we can definitely appreciate it out without the reflection of the acrylic display case. You can see again from this angle how close the plaque is. So now with now that the display case is off, I can just move it away a little bit and get it right against the corner. Of course, once the display case is put into the lip, you force the plaque back. But even here, you can see that it's literally like you can't see it. Like it's literally less than a millimeter space between the top edge of the silver plaque and the actual lightsaber. which is just, in my opinion, insane, but whatever. I just like to twirl this around so that you can definitely appreciate the beauty of the lightsaber without, again, the glare from the acrylic. And we're going to get into, the details of this hilt once I pick it up. There's a lot to go over. So this is going to be a long review, just to let you know, because there's a lot to say about it. Maybe because this is such a long review, the New Hope Signature Edition Luke, which I hope to get, will be shorter because there's maybe not as much to say. The very first description tends to be the longest. That's why my Darth Vader New Hope was so long, both because of, kind of the backstory of how I finally got it and how it kind of reignited in me my love for these hilts. I mean, if only I loved them more 10 years ago when I bought Empire and Return of the Jedi Vader. I could have saved myself probably tens of thousands of dollars because these things were not nearly that expensive back then. But again, you lose some, you win some, as they say. So just sort of twirling around the hilt and the base so you can get to see it from all different angles. See the D-ring right here. Okay, so we're gonna stop for now, and then let's take a look at the paperwork. Take all that off. So of course this is the main event right here. We'll save it for our last. As usual, you have all of this other stuff. You have the business card. Is this the registration? Yeah, this is the registration card. This is the invitation for the Master Replica Society. This is the warranty. And again, all of these came with the, with these things here. This will help brochure. So fall of 2002. So how did that work out? Some of you out there who's been there maybe can tell me, like, how could it be fall of 2002 and the signature versions of like Vader and Dooku is like already sold out? I mean, that is insane. And they made 1,000 of each, right? So like, did somebody explain that to me? Like, I thought that the first product was like 2003. And so was I wrong? Like, was Vader and Dooku, was it released before Mark Hamill's Empire Strikes Back Luke? Because normally it doesn't increase in edition size. I mean, was Luke Skywalker that popular? Like, he's more popular than Darth Vader? Like, you're only making like 1,000 of Dooku and Vader dual sig, but you decided to do 1,500 of Mark of Luke Skywalker Empire? Or was Mark Hamill just such a sweetheart that he was the only one crazy enough to commit to signing 1,500 of these plaques? I mean, I don't know, but I think that's kind of crazy. Anyways, let's look at the actual signature card. So as you can see, this is what this thing here is probably worth $1,000, honestly, because along with the plaque and everything, this is kind of like what we're paying all this money for, is like, the beautiful signature. So here again, you see the Master Replica's tracing paper. We'll put it aside for now. And then this is just, again, just this random piece of paper, probably just there to protect the picture. So here it is. Great picture of Mark Hamill signing. This would have been back in, again, 2000 and circa 2003. You can see he's, so interesting. I didn't know that Mark Hamill is a left-hander. So you can see he's signing with his left hand. He's a lefty. Well, there you go. So, so here he is, excuse me. Here he is signing. Great picture of him. Long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then, of course, here you have the original certificate of authenticity signed by Mark Hamill. You can see here that it does state Star Wars: The Empire Strikes Back. So this is specific, again, to the prop, signed by Howard Rothman and Scott Vogel. I know I say this in every video, but I so wish that they had kept this particular certificate of authenticity for all of the lightsabers, all of the certificate, like even the non-signature ones. Like, it's just so classy. I mean, look at the gold seal, and then, the president of Lucas Licensing and chief executive officer, Master Replicas, and both signed. I mean, that's just really, really classy. I'm so sad and disappointed that you can see Master Replicas. You can see the company shrinking as, time goes by. And, it just gets less and less and less. I like the triplicate, certificates. And later on, you'll see that they cheaped out, and now it went from a triplicate to like a double. And then, for God's sakes, for the Luke New Hope signature edition, they didn't include a picture. They had to send an insert later on. Just really, disappointing, sad. So definitely the Luke Return of the Jedi, I didn't quite like the fact that that certificate of authenticity was just bent way too far. It was obvious that the guy had just basically smashed it open. So I'm going to try to, and I like to try to open it like you open like a very, very collectible or very, very rare book. You don't bend the binding, you gently open it. So here you go. Let's take a look. I'm going to scroll up very slowly so you can pause and read for yourself sort of the preamble and the description of this lightsaber. They usually go through kind of a nice little history of the movie and the character in the movie, and then they talk about the prop and all of the cool little details. All right, there we go. So now I'm going to put this away. Another nice picture. One more shot of Mark Hamill signing. Put this over here. Put that over here. Take a special care of this. Worth its weight in gold, these guys. And then carefully putting this away. Okay, I'm gonna put this aside on top of the acrylic. So what should we focus on next? A lot of appetizer. We haven't even gotten to the main course yet. So let's check out the signature plaque. Look at this. It's mirror shine, guys. You can actually see the phone, my phone and the tripod. You can see me in my undershirt. Excuse me, with my little necklace hanging out. Put that back. So, anyways, Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5, Luke Skywalker, lightsaber. This is edition number 303 out of 1500. You can see the MR Master Replicas logo, Lucasfilm logo. So I polished this pretty good. There is a little bit residual tarnish here I couldn't quite get to. If you look really closely, you can see that in this case, Mr. Hamill actually signed a couple millimeters outside the white, and so I couldn't quite polish right to the line because that would, of course, affected the signature. But this did come tarnished, and it did look quite a bit better when I used brasso to polish it up. There are limits There are some really, really nice versions of these plaques that came like literally straight out of the box, and it's beautiful. But I'm going to tell you something. In the vast majority of cases, even sealed in box, this piece of silver will come out tarnished. It's just the way these things are over 20 years, and you're gonna have to polish them, you know? So there you have it. Now in this one, normally I would have placed this a lot higher up, okay? But in this case, the person who bought this placed it way down. And again, you know, I can understand why, because you have to have this fit and not hit the lightsaber. If I move this all the way up, I don't actually think I would have been able to fit it in this case. I mean, as crazy as it is to say that. So luckily I bought it already fixed. And also luckily the guy knew what he was doing. He put it in the right correction, the right orientation. He didn't do it like this, for instance, you know, which would have been kind of interesting. So yeah, anyways, again, I normally put mine a little bit higher up. He put his just low enough that it doesn't actually touch the ground, but it comes awfully close. And this was just to maximize the height he has over here. So there you go. You can see this is the double-sided, incredibly sticky adhesive to lock this in place. You can see a little bit of the tarnish in the back here that, of course, you know, I'm not going to polish off. So there you have it. I think this looks really good. Nice signature and nice sheen. I'm pretty happy with this. It'll probably tarnish again over time, but we'll worry about that when that happens. Okay, so now it's time to take this hilt off, and we can finally begin to talk about it. Now, before doing it, let's just start with the generalities. So the original lightsaber hilt for Luke, at least from A New Hope, was taken from a Graflex flash gun. And those are those really old style, you know, cameras where, like, we're talking 1930s, you know, where if you see these old movies where they take a picture and you see the flash bulb flash, you know. So that's what was the basis, okay, for the lightsaber hilts, was these Graflex flash guns. And then they would modify it a little bit to give it that sort of science fiction-like look. So this hilt has elements of both the Graflex as well as, you know, the additions. And of course, on top of that, this is the Empire Strikes Back version, which means that it has some additional, you know, changes. So we'll start with this part over here. So you can take a look here at the beautiful detailing, the screw. So this is all part of the flash gun, all part of the Graflex. You see the little switch right here. So this is the little power switch. This is actually a button you can actually depress. This is called the bunny ears. And, you know, if you can imagine that this thing is held, like, you know, vertically like this, and then what you're seeing over here, this little space is where we put the flash bulb. Okay, so again, it's more held like vertically like this. I don't have the ability to do it. Let me see. I can just stretch it up. So yeah, so just imagine, you know, this is sort of connected to the camera, and the bulb is there. So that's the original, again, inspiration for the hilt. So this is what they call the bunny ears, right here. And then this here on the inside is where the, you know, the bulb is. Now, of course, lightsaber lore, This is the emitter. Believe it or not, you can actually press this a little bit in and out. I'm not going to do too much to that. I am holding a $3,000 prop after all, but that's pretty cool. And you can actually turn this side to side. Believe it or not, I try to make it a little centered to this button. But there's working parts. I mean, Master Replicas recreated this so perfectly that it's actually built. It's not one piece or cast. It actually, it's all metal and aluminum, and they actually put it together. So there you go. So you have a button here. You have the switch. Again, the bunny ears, and they have some nice detail here. You have the screw here to hold it together. Some more details here, and then you have the switch on the other side. As you can see, there's 2 buttons, one up top, identical one down below. You can see the knurling over here. And this is different from the New Hope version, because the New Hope version, this is not a button, this is actually a glass eye. And the New Hope version had actually a tab. Here you just see there's a little hole, but there was a tab here that would keep this from falling off once this was unscrewed. And we called that the beer tab because it looked like the tab of a soda can or a beer can. So the New Hope original Graflex lightsaber hilt had that beer tab here, and you can see the Empire Strikes Back version did away with that. So there's already quite a bit of differences. 1, 2 differences alone just in this region here. Another thing to keep in mind is that the finish of the saber is brushed metal. So when you're seeing these things, excuse me, it's important to note that they're not scratches. Okay, they're not scratches, but these little fine vertical lines, that's actually the texture of the aluminum or the metal. It's brushed. Okay. So there you have it here and here. As we move further along, we're now at the so-called control box, or the clasp. You have the lever. This is considered 3 o'clock, I believe, in terms of its positioning. Another difference is that in A New Hope, this control box area here was a bubble strip from a Texas Instruments calculator, similar to what was on the Darth Vader New Hope and Empire Strikes Back lightsabers. And here for Empire Strikes Back, they changed it from the bubble strip to a PCB. And the fat side of these circuits are facing the lever right over here, and the thin side is facing out. So that was another change between the New Hope and Empire Strikes Back lightsabers. They changed it into a printed circuit board, which is quite interesting, I think. You can see this still has the Made in China sticker. You can see the nice lines here. If you were to make this prop from the Graflex, you would see the Graflex insignia here. Okay. Now moving along to these infamous grips, the T-tracks. So again, this is the most telling feature. When you see the New Hope Luke hilt, there's no notch where you put these rivets, okay? It's all one. And if you look here, you'll see that there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Is there 6 of them? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so there's 6 of these all around. I think that might be actually a small inaccuracy from what I read. I think the Empire Strikes Back one is supposed to have 7 of these T-tracks, whereas the New Hope one has 6. So I think they might be missing 1, but I could be wrong. I'll have to double check. Or I could be mistaken, and the New Hope has 7 and this has only 6. But I think it's actually I think I'm right. I think there's one less. Another thing is that in the New Hope, excuse me, the end of the T-track is at a 30-degree beveled angle, whereas here you can see there's no bevel, it's a 90-degree angle. Now, why these rivets? They were placed because in Empire Strikes Back, you were shooting both in Norway, I think, which they used on location for the Hoth scenes, and then they had to move to like the swamps of Dagobah, which is very humid. I don't know where they went for that, but they went to a very humid location. I don't know, maybe Florida or something like that. And so that swing in temperature made it very difficult for these grips to stay on, and they would frequently fall off, which obviously wasn't a factor in Star Wars: A New Hope. And so, per what the prop department does, they just had to fix it quickly, and they decided to take care of it by putting in screws. And they literally just drilled and screwed through the grips to keep them from falling off. Very elegant solution. And so this is, of course, recreated for the prop. Now here, it looks like there's silver rivets. And that's because when they used the prop in the Hoth scenes, for some reason, these were silver. In every other instance, for instance, in Dagobah and Bespin, it was black. So perhaps this is obviously then a homage to the Hoth lightsaber, because you can actually see the silver here. In addition, it looks like rivets because for many, many years, even decades, people saw the silver because they were most easily appreciated when you didn't have high definition or 4K, you were able to go freeze frame by frame. It was more easily seen in the Hoth scenes because of the silver, and it looked like rivets. But now we know, without too much controversy, that in fact there were screws instead of rivets, and it was black in most of the scenes to hide it. But in Hoth, for whatever reason, the Hoth scenes, this was silver. So this is very accurate to that. And then if you look on the end here, this thing right here, this rectangular little, belt clip assembly was taken from a kobold, which is like another flash. And they took the kobold with the attached D-ring and they screwed it into place with two of these guys. And these are these two rivets here. This is distinct from the New Hope version, where they just had one D-ring without this kobold assembly, and they simply actually just used one rivet to attach it. So here's the D-ring, here's the kobold assembly, and accurately two rivets. There you have it over here. If you look here, you can see clearly the Master Replicas LLC signature edition. Very, very beautiful. Right there. So I think I've shown every aspect of this hilt and given you as much knowledge as I know about the components of the Graflex and how it's different from a New Hope. It'll be interesting when I review the New Hope by itself and maybe use that opportunity to point out some of the differences. There is a clear lineage between Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber from Revenge of the Sith to Luke's lightsaber, which was supposed to be Anakin's. I mean, it's supposed to be the same lightsaber. That's what Obi-Wan gave Luke in New Hope. You can see the evolution of that saber to the Empire Strikes Back one that I'm holding in my hand, to the one that, that Rey got in The Force Awakens, which she handed to Luke in The Last Jedi. So you can clearly kind of see that evolution, and that they're obviously the same, foundation, the same hilt, but each with its little tiny differences between Anakin's Luke New Hope, Luke Empire, and the one that Rey found in The Force Awakens. Sadly, with Ray's version, I don't think we're ever going to get one even close to the quality of what I'm holding in my hand, because they just don't make props like that anymore. They have them for the Galaxy's Edge version, which is, of course, an abomination. But in terms of something that you can display in the same room as one of these works of art, I'm afraid that will never happen. I can always hope, but again, I think that ship sailed. We're never going to have replicas like that. So, it's really cool to kind of, again, see that evolution and see the similarities across all of these different hilts. One last thing is that the infamous rubber problem is still present. The guy who actually showed it to me thought that, this was so clean. He swore that he goes, I think they maybe already stripped the rubber off with the alcohol because it's just, it's so good. But no, as it turns out, there is a slight stickiness. I think you can hear it. Listen. See that? Hear that? So there is a slight, very slight stickiness, but definitely way less than some other ones. And it's just kind of like, again, a crapshoot in terms of where these lightsabers were stored, how they were stored. I mean, unless you have it in a temperature humidity controlled vault, you're screwed if you collect in Louisiana or Florida or, one of those really humid places. Game over, all right? But if you happen to collect in Arizona, or Southern California, where I am at in the Inland Empire, they tend to keep quite a bit better. So I think actually we're just fortunate that this happened to be, kept or displayed in a very low humid environment. And so there is degeneration already, but even after 20 years, it's not too bad. So there you have it. Not that there's anything wrong with stripping that little rubber thing off with alcohol, getting down to the plastic. There are some purists who feel like that's the more accurate version because the original props never had that rubber coating that was only added when Steve Dimzel, who's I guess one of the head engineers, creative directors, I guess he got bamboozled into allowing it by one of the factories, was saying, oh yeah, we can put this little rubber sheet on, it looks so cool, it'll feel so cool. And then of course it decomposed. So there you have that. But yeah, the problem persists. Every lightsaber with these grips have that problem. I don't think any escapes it. So, Luke Signature Edition, New Hope, Luke Elite Edition, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back Luke, Vader, both Limited Edition and Signature Edition, New Hope, Vader Empire, Limited Edition, Signature Edition, Anakin from Episode 3, Anakin, Darth Vader, Revenge of the Sith, Episode 3, the Yodas, it just goes on and on. If they have these little rubber grips, like Mace Windu has it, it's going to be sticky, and just a matter of time, depending on where you live, where it's going to start breaking down. You're going to see the white, the splotches, the ridges are going to have to strip it down. Luckily, I haven't had to do that yet, but it is something that you have to be aware of. Okay, so there you have it. That's all I have to say about this lightsaber. I'm holding it in my hand. You can see that it is a beautiful specimen, almost essentially near perfect. There are one or two tiny little spots that maybe if you have a very, very sharp eye, you can see there's a little tiny scratch right there, but it's essentially invisible. So very, very happy with the condition of this one. I'm gonna go real close so you can actually, again, appreciate the brush to metal between the T-tracks. Right here, you can see sort of the detail, again, the texture of all of this. Look at all of that. You can see the little tiny area here where there's a little rivet to keep the clamp box together. Got the nice lever right here. So again, hopefully you can appreciate all of the nice features, giving you very, very good close-ups. There's a little switch, the little Graflex, the missing beer tab, 2 buttons. The bunny ears. Look at the barrel of the Graflex flash gun where the bulb goes, and this is the emitter. And of course, my favorite shot, indeed, the signature edition. Okay, so now I'm going to gently put everything back together. There's actually a ridge to hold it, so we're going to rotate. Make sure that it's nicely lined up. Just like that. And then we have the signature edition plaque, which again, you have to actually gently go low and then put here. And then finally, the acrylic case. I do kind of like my D-ring out like that. I think if the D-ring is out like that, you might have to move it just a little bit in. Let me make sure everything is lined up. I think so. Hopefully this will actually still, yep. Interesting. So I'm gonna have to move it in a little bit more. Just so everything can fit. So again, you can see how tight this formation is, just to be able to fit the signature plaque and just to be able to fit the signature plaque and the lightsaber. You have to do this. Pretty annoying. And there you have it. So I think you cannot appreciate how, it's just kind of tricky even trying to, put the lightsaber, the proper orientation. I like the D-ring out a little bit so you can kind of, again, see the rivets and the signature edition. And you have to, move it. You can see how the plaque has to touch the lightsaber, which I'm not a big fan of. And then just how tight everything is. This is sort of the one big downside to, this otherwise amazing work of art, is I really dislike the case. Can't blame them. This was one of their first products. They obviously got better pretty quickly. But yeah, annoying. I mean, I think Vader's Empire Strikes Back was very similar, except at least in Vader's version, the legs were a little bit higher. So you lifted the saber up a little bit. But the Empire Strikes Back, signature edition for Darth Vader, the plaque was also stuck over here. Similarly, again, for the dual signature New Hope Vader, same thing, 2 plaques on either side, very low. So I think the Vader New Hope, Vader Empire, the Mark Hamill Empire Strikes Back, the Dooku, and then both Obi-Wan versions as first built and the weathered. So at least six of these lightsabers all have this kind of low case, and then always having the inner lip versus the outer lip. Again, pretty annoying. So it is what it is. Hopefully, eventually, I can upgrade to a case that is more in line with my Return of the Jedi and Obi-Wan, just the later Master Replicas cases, which works so well. But this is my review of The Empire Strikes Back, Episode 5, Star Wars Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, Luke Skywalker, Signature Edition. 1,500 total, minus 303 out of 1,500. And again, as with all of these reviews, very, very special because they're all so rare to come across in this type of condition. Very happy with it. And maybe next time we'll talk about, if I'm lucky enough, we'll talk about the Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, Signature Edition, which will finish off the so-called Luke trifecta. I already have the Vader signature trifecta, and so getting the Vader and the Luke trifecta together is pretty darn special after all. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this and all the extra detail that you might have learned and extra knowledge you might have learned about this lightsaber. Do take care.